Hi there, everybody. Good morning, and welcome back to another Prestige Liquids live chat. My name is Andrew. Uh, Today, I'm going to be talking about the Chivas Regal Mizunara cask. I'll be giving a little bit of a review on that as well, and just to talk a little bit about NAS whiskey or non-age statement. First of all, I'd just like to give a big congratulations to Ralphie. I just jumped over from Aquavite's live chat where he had Ralphie featuring on his channel. I believe that it is Ralphie's 10-year anniversary. I might have missed some details, but I think that's what was going on. So if, excuse me. So if any of you aren't able to come in to actually join in on the live chat, I understand perfectly. Man, they're just a fantastic team uh, to be to be chatting with and watching. So hopefully I'll see you all on. Hopefully I'll be seeing a few of you on the replay. So don't forget to drop in any comments and such. All right, well, let's get to it. See, I've brought out old trusty today. I finally bought my Glen can with me. I really need to invest in more of these. I only have the one, so yeah, I should get myself some more. All right, time to pour. Now, generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of shivers. I've had the 12-year-old, I've had the 18-year-old, and to be honest, they don't really do anything for me. I'm not a big fan. Um, but I was given a bottle of the Mizunara for my birthday last year, and I was really excited to. Um, I'd say I was very excited to get a bottle of this because I had been wanting to try it, and oh man, I love this whiskey. This is a fantastic dram. If you haven't tried it yet, I highly suggest that I do highly suggest that you pick up a bottle if you're able to. Um, yeah, just a fantastic whiskey. So for now, let's start on the tasting and let's see how we go. So on the nose. Okay, so um, that oak is very dominant on the nose. There's a decent amount of vanilla that comes through. Fruits. I'm trying to pick out what fruit note it is that I'm getting on that. Maybe apricot. Yeah, it's a very subtle apricot, probably more dried apricot. Touch of burnt sugar. It has a slight saltiness to it. Again, very woody, so that oak note is coming through very, very strong. Very grassy, herbal, but more of like a dried herbs. A bit of apple that comes through. So there's quite a bit going on the nose in this whiskey. This is actually the first time that I'm actually nosing this in my Glen can. I've been using tumblers or these other glasses when I've when I've been drinking this. So I haven't really been able to get as many of these notes that I am today. But I'll say so far it's off to a good start. Yeah. All right. Let's see what we get on the palate. Oh, very sweet and dry. Not much of a mouthfeel. It does. It will quickly coat your tongue, and then it will go. It's quite spicy. Uh, I don't want to say peppery because it's not. It's not really a pepper spice, but unless it's a mix of pepper. Um, it's very warming actually. This is good cold weather winter whiskey. What else are we getting in there? The grassy notes very dominant. Um, Slight wood notes. What else? What else? I'm getting a touch of the dried fruit note coming through again. At the moment, there's not really a lot going on the palate, but this is a very enjoyable whiskey. This is definitely one that you could consider a daily sipper. I've enjoyed this from the very first neck pour down to about, I'll say I'm just over halfway through the bottle now. I have enjoyed this thoroughly. Um, it's yeah, bottled at 40%. It does have a bit more of a kick to it. I would say it does feel more of say maybe 42, but again, it's very light. I mean, it's really just pushing that percentage there. Um, but put that aside, yeah, fantastic dram. The finish, I'm getting quite a lot of like a grape, green grapes, combination of green grapes and I guess red grapes. I'm not gonna, I'm not going to. I can't really specify what type of grape particularly, but yeah, definitely a lot of grape on the finish. Especially like the when you get that tang from the grape skins. Um, what else? I guess coming back on the palate again, that grape flavor is actually there as well. Although it hits quickly and then it goes. Um, yeah, that doesn't last very long. I have to say the best parts of this whiskey are actually on the nose and the finish. Unfortunately, it does fall a bit short on the palate, but that again, that's not to say that it's a bad whiskey, because it's not. It is actually very enjoyable. Um, I've been having a look at this in the shops lately, and unfortunately, it does go for about the $100 Australian, yeah, about $100 Australian mark at the moment. So it is a bit on the pricey side. I think if it was to go on sale, or if I could find it for a cheaper price, I would pick it up. Uh, but for $100, I think there are other whiskies that I would rather go for. Now, this so this is Chivas Scottish blended whiskey, although it has been aged in Mizunara Japanese oak casks. Now, the, there's been quite an interesting story with Mizunara oak. I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on it, because I'm not. I'm just kind of going by from what I've heard from other people. But apparently, what happened, say, during World War II, the US pretty much stopped all trade with Japan during the war, and that included a lot of the ex-bourbon barrels that were being sent over for the Japanese to age their whiskey. And so since they weren't able to get their hands on those American oak barrels, they had to use what was more locally available, and that was the Mizunara oak. And I have to say, probably one of the most tragic aspects of the Japanese using the Mizunara oak is the fact that apparently a lot of the trees that they were cutting down to turn into barrels were hundreds of years old. So if you think of it in that sense, it's quite sad to think some of the history that was being I guess chopped down to turn into whiskies. But I guess if you think about it, they were needing a wood source. They didn't have anything else that they could use at the time, so they did what they did, and as a result, we have products like this. Now, the other interesting thing is that apparently Mizunara oak is possibly one of the worst types of oak that you can use to make a barrel. Apparently, it is extremely porous. It does not hold liquid well at all. So they would be losing a lot of whiskey due to evaporation and whatnot. And the other issue that they had was that, especially for younger aged stock, their whiskies were being over oaked, and I guess that's a problem that a lot of bourbon distillers in the US have, due to their strict rules that they have especially for having to use like brand new white oak for their barrels. You've got very dominant, intense flavors going straight into a young whiskey, and apparently the very young whiskey that the Japanese were making at the time using the Mizunara oak was not very desirable, to say the least. So apparently a lot of distilleries actually stopped, or maybe not so much stopped production, but they put aside whatever they had barreled pretty much right into the back of their warehouses, and just left the product aside in the back of the warehouse, almost forgotten. Now, 20 years later, somebody would come along and they would find these barrels that had been pushed aside, and all these unwanted bottles that had been pushed aside. Somebody would come along and be like, "Oh, what's this over there?" They pull out that barrel, they sampled the whiskey, and they realized, damn, Mizunara oak makes some pretty damn good whiskey, but the downside was that it took a long time to mature. I mean, 20 years is it's no short amount of time, especially in the whiskey industry um, where things do take time to make, and especially when people are wanting a lot of, say, like age statement products, for example, those, say, even 10 years is a long time to wait. But at least, I guess, with Scottish whiskey, waiting 10 years, you get quite a decent product. Whereas with the Japanese, they had to wait, without realizing, they had to wait much longer to be able to get um, an enjoyable product, and they found it by mistake. There's a bit of a hunt now that that has been sitting in the glass. Um, there's a honey note that's come through. Also, the texture has changed. I feel that it's become thicker. I wasn't expecting that, actually. I guess I normally drink it a bit quicker, so I don't notice that so much. But yeah, that was, the texture definitely changed. All right, so what I might do, I'm going to pour it myself a little bit more, and I will add water to this. Not going to pour too much, just a little bit. You can see the color on that is beautiful. It's a nice golden color. Very deep, yeah, a nice deep golden color. That's very nice. The legs very thin. It doesn't. It's not, obviously not a very oily whiskey. It's very clean. Actually, what I might try and do, I've been seeing this tip. I'm gonna stick my finger in the glass. Don't mind me. I've been seeing the guys on the Whiskey Vault do this, where they'll take a drop of whiskey, rub it into their hands, and see what until it dries, and see what notes you get from that. Again, not much going on. It's quite minty, actually. Almost like a bug spray. No, it wasn't. Probably not the best note to describe your whiskey. I think, yeah, how do you like your bug spray whiskey? And it's like, this whiskey brought to you by Mortine. Okay, so I'm just gonna add a drop. I don't want to be in the 40%. That was, yeah, probably, I think I might have put a bit too much. That was about 2 or 3 drops. Being 40%, I've probably wiped that out now, but we'll see how we go. Alright, so actually not much has changed on the nose. Still oaky. There's probably a bit more of a citrus note that's coming through at the moment. Still grassy. Okay, so the palate has changed now. That spice note is nowhere near as intense as what it was. So the water has subdued the whiskey quite a bit. It's actually pushed the. I'm surprised. Before, the spicy note was more in the middle of the tongue. Adding the water now has actually seemed to push it towards the back of the mouth. Uh, I've always found that very interesting. How sometimes the flavors can, how they move around in your mouth. It's your your tongue is a very complex and strange thing at times. It's added a bit of kick to the finish. It's not as mellow as what it was before on the, so before the water. I would say that dry, spicy note, you do feel it a lot more on the finish now that I've added water to it. Um, but again, I'm surprised water really doesn't hurt this whiskey at all. It's, although it has mellowed it, it hasn't wiped it out. Um, and it has kind of flipped the flavors around to a certain degree. It's still very enjoyable. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to, I'll set that aside for now, I'll finish it a little bit later. The other thing that I wanted to touch base on for a little bit today as well was um, you may have noticed that obviously, I mean, you probably can't see it very well on this, but this is a non-age statement whiskey, or NAS. Um, so pretty much all that means is that the distillery have blended whatever whiskies they've wanted to blend, and they're not specifying any age. So it's most likely made up of very young stock, which I find, I don't. There's a lot of debate when it comes to NAS. Um, I don't know if it's the fact that one, that they're not putting a age label on the whiskey, or the fact that it is most likely um, very young stock that people don't like so much about NAS whiskies. Um, Personally, I think it's more so the fact that they're not actually telling you the age. I think uh, probably a good probably a good 80% of people out there would be more than happy to be drinking young whiskey if only they knew what the minimum age is on the bottle, because I think it's kind of given rise to the misconception that all NAS whiskey is bad, and that's not true at all. Obviously, there are a few, there are. I guess it goes the same even with age statement whiskies. There are going to be a lot that you like. There's going to be a lot that you're not too fond of, and that goes the same with NAS. Um, but I think people just like to have as much information available to them as possible. And I guess being able to know the age of the whiskey that you're drinking it is a big deal to a lot of people. Let's put that aside for now. Oh, that almost went down the wrong pipe. Actually, just then, I also got a slight anise or licorice taste on that. So then this whiskey has a lot going on. say for myself personally, I don't really have an issue with non-age statement whiskies. I find them quite enjoyable. I ha- I have to say at the moment I have not really had a bad one as such. I'd say they've all been pretty good. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if I have had one that I haven't really enjoyed. Um, but at the moment, no, I can't think. Um, would I like to see an age statement on this? Definitely. Look, as much as I enjoy an NAS, personally, I would be happy to know what the age is on the bottle. To be honest, I don't care what the age is. Just because it's a young whiskey does not necessarily mean that it's going to be a bad one, and that goes the same for whiskies that are of higher age. I mean, uh, there's been a lot of people who have taken, say, a 25-year-old whiskey, for example, and they've thought that it was rubbish or was not as good as its younger counterpart. Um, but again, that comes down to your own personal preference, and if there's uh, you're gonna like what you're going to like, and say what you don't, well, somebody else will enjoy it. Trying to think what else. If I could pick a favorite NAS that I've had so far, I think probably going back to Japanese whiskies, I have to say uh, Hibiki. Definitely the Hibiki Japanese Harmony. They have made some fantastic. They have made some incredibly fantastic whiskey over at Hibiki, and some of those are their NAS range. The harmony is incredible. I haven't had it myself for quite some time. It has probably been a good year and a half to 2 years since I've last had the Japanese Harmony, but from what I remember, that is an exceptionally well balanced whiskey. The flavors are incredible, and I would have to say that they are just as good, or if not close to their age statement counterparts. Um, Trying to think what other what other whiskies have I had that I would say were quite enjoyable for NAS? Ah, and I'm sure this is definitely one that is an incredible whiskey. It is a non-age statement, and I'm sure it is a favorite of a lot of people, and that is the Abelard. That is their cask strength edition. I recently bought batch, I think was it 61? I can't remember, but it was something like that. I mean, I could even be mistaken. I'm fairly certain it was 61. I'll have to have a look later. But oh, what an incredible whiskey. I mean, if you love your high ABV, then the Abernard is definitely one that you need to get your hands on. I mean, it can be quite pricey, especially in Sydney. But if you're able to get yourself a bottle, I mean, I waited until I had some gift vouchers to before I bought that, and oh man, it was incredible. Definitely a fantastic whiskey, and again, as I mentioned, an NAS. Um, I mean, you can't go wrong with it. It is absolutely incredible. Um, what else can I add on to this? I think I've pretty much covered. I think I've pretty much covered what I've intended to cover at the moment. Um, I think that's it for now. I really did just want to do a quick live chat. I didn't want to keep this going on for too long, so I think I'll draw this to an end. Again, if you end up catching this on the replay, thank you very much. Don't forget to throw in a like and a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please add the subscription. Also, you tap that little bell notification, so that way whenever I do any new videos, you'll be the first to know about it. And yeah, I'd say that's it. Again, my name is Andrew of prestigeliquidsww. I look forward to seeing you all again, and have yourselves a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next video. Get this.